I didn't read the minutes.
You know.
All right, we're ready to go. I'll call the meeting
All
to
right.
order, please. Judy, if you could do the roll.
Neil Butnick,
Here.
Judy Neville, Tom Schulte,
Here.
Amy Carroll. Here. Todd Lavieri.
Here.
Michael Chin.
Here.
Yes. Chris Labrie.
Here.
Victor Alvarez.
Here.
is here. I can't see you. Okay. Maria Weingarten. Here. Robert Hamill is hopefully.
Here.
Oh,
Oh, hey,
good.
Bob.
There he is.
Good.
All right. And Colm Dobbin
Here.
and our first selectman, Kevin Moynihan. We're fully seated.
Good to go.
All right.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Any other housekeeping items? No. Just minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. Approval for the minutes for meetings held both on the 15th and 17th.
All right, I have a correction to add for Tuesday, February 15th, your last page. After the part about first paragraph, schoolhouse improvements, major improvements, playhouse and oil to gas conversions. Mr. Mann and other public works personnel responded to questions and comments. Above that, we're going to add that the town of New Canaan continues to contribute toward future projects of the NCAF and has begun to contribute to future products of the Waveney Park Conservancy at approximately $300,000 per year. So in that approval would be that additional sentence. So wanna-
Any questions about that? Any discussion? Okay. I need a motion to, I can approve approve them both with that correction.
Right.
Yeah.
As revised, so
As
moved.
revised, Tom,
Thank you.
first, a second. Neil?
Yep.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Michael? Yeah, opposed? None? Good. So moved. Okay. He's on the line. He's on the line. No, he's not. He's Bob Himmel, you're on, right? He's not.
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, that's what I thought.
Present, yeah.
Okay.
I'm on.
Okay, thanks, everyone. All right, we really have two items to go through today and tonight, I should say, in some detail. The first, we've prepared a summary of where we are and what we've asked Ann and Josh to present is a summary of the work that's been done thus far, starting with the Board of Selectmen's budget, their changes, modifications came to us. We've done our analysis review. We've kept track of potential suggestions, changes, adds, puts, takes. And so that's what's in front of you. You have a hard copy. It's a working draft, okay? It is not a final document. All we did is to make sure, because you can't read anything on the screen, that you had something to have in your hands. It's the working draft. It's a summary of the work. And like I said, Ann and Josh will go through that to make sure we know where we are and to get a sense for our meeting next Tuesday for our public hearing and for our vote. So that's the first thing that we're going to go through. And I'm going to ask that we start with that. The second topic on the agenda, obviously, is to go through capital. The capital liaison working group, Amy, Chris, and Neil, and we've had conversations and, just make sure we understood everything, had a sense as to where we were. I think they've reached out to Tiger. I think we've spoken, we had one comment back to the superintendent with a suggestion around the planetarium. And so we can certainly go through that. So we want to go through a few things, all the capital excluding the police department. And of course, we've got a placeholder for the police department. So this is to really talk about everything, but specifically the other list. And do we, should we do it? Should it be next year? Should it be deferred? Should it be less? All of the clarifications that we'll go through. And I think what's the best way to do that? Is that for you to present that? Yes. Okay. So, and that here, does everyone have a copy of that?
No. She's got it.
Does or does not?
She's-
So we have a working draft copy of all of those ideas,
Yeah, I would
suggestions,
say just
recommendations.
thoughts.
Thoughts. Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
it's feedback from what we heard over the last month.
I hope there's not there. I think there are.
Excellent. Okay. So with that, I think we'll turn it over to you two. Yeah.
I need 11.
Ask Maria.
We're gonna need a minute before we get a final.
Ask Maria.
Oops, I think you're
Oh,
one short.
one shy. Sorry.
No, hold it.
Hold on.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay, so we'll need a couple. Okay, well, that's the second thing on the agenda. So let's get to the first one. So if Ann and Josh, you want to walk us through where we are? And the point was, if you all recall, we have built a simulation model that George and Michael and Chris have really done a great job with to give us a sense when we work on expenses, work on revenues. We have a mill rate, everything's in there. And we, again, we have a placeholder starting point for the conversation based on what we've done. So over to you two.
Sure. So in front of you, the first page, summary of changes. We'll kind of start at the top. These are mostly just changes from when the Board of Selectmen had recommended their budget to kind of where we are right now. And I'll just go over some of the top section of that. Just starting at the top with tax supported capital, that was approved at 1.3 million. There was an addition of the 50,000 for a vehicle for the health department. There was the subtraction of 55,000, which is lighting for Mead Park, which should have been in bonded. This is all tax supported, so that got moved over to bonded. There was the application of the 423,000 out of the bond premium that was being used. So that's just a direct reduction of that from 1.3 down to 939. And then there was the re-addition of maintenance work on Waveney Park trails. That was taken out initially. And maybe if Tiger wants to speak to
Just
its
get traffic.
re-addition or.
Let me just suggest this, walk through the whole
Sure,
thing,
sure.
and then we can come back for
Sure.
questions. Let's just get
Sure.
oriented.
Can you put that
So
up for
that's
the-
the 50,000 being added back in for Waveney Park Trails. The next item is just for the land acquisition fund. It was in for this current year, but it was not in for the next 4 years of the 5-year plan. So that was just added back in. It should have been there. The next is 5,000 added to the engineering salary full timeline for the additional 5K that was requested. Then the last of this group is the 152,000 increase in the Board of Ed expense summary line. Just it was a kind of a timing issue of what was approved by or recommended by the Board of Selectmen from when the Board of Ed had voted on and approved theirs. The changes between versions hadn't made it into the final budget, so that's getting increased by 152. That delta is made up by the change in substitute teacher costs from 100 to 125 and associated payroll fees. So, yep, that's the top section of that. I think Anne can continue on to the second.
The second section. The second section is, and we can go into detail later on it, on the town pension and the OPEB, they're kind of parcel here together on what was done. We typically do it every 2 years, so we did it every year because of the valuation. So we found out that in doing that, the ADAC can be reduced for the pension by about $600,000, and that's the actuarially determined contribution that our actuarials tell us that we should contribute. So right now that actually got reduced from 1.7 million to, you can see the it's actually 1.090. So we put the 600 for that. The same on the GASB, or I'm sorry, on the OPEB. The OPEB, the 177 was their ADAC. We can actually eliminate that in total because of the valuation of the funds, again, with doing evaluation on them to find out that we're in a much better position because of the value of the fund itself. So we're eliminating the ADAC on that completely. The bond interest, when I have town and schools, that's related to, you have the 5-year capital plan that was put in front of you. Myself and Tiger went through and said of the 5-year capital plan, if they were all approved, it's a pure estimate, obviously, what projects would actually get done and bonded September 2022, because that would be our next bonding schedule, and what ones would go into that. And based on doing that cash flow, this is the interest that would hit split up between the two categories of town and Board of Ed, and estimated, obviously, the interest for March of 2023. So it's slightly different than your 5-year capital because it's a cash flow basis. Then
And that's assuming we just bond once
yes,
for the whole
Yes.
fiscal year.
for the
Okay,
for the end of September, we just do it once. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So that's our typical schedule outside of any other type of project that you do.
Right.
If we bonded in September, if we bonded in December, we wouldn't have that. Or
We wouldn't have it at all.
it
It
would
would get
just-
pushed out.
Or it
We'd have.
would hit in June instead of March.
We'd have a year, so we'd have March. It would miss it. Yeah, it would miss
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's not all bad.
Well, it's just,
Well, it's just how you.
You still
yeah.
have
Last year we
paperwork.
we
Yeah.
bonded in December.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last part was the Board of Ed insurance. The Board of Ed was, they sat with me and went through with myself and their broker, so I could understand their claims on it, just like our broker went through and understand our claims from the internal service fund standpoint. And in the budget, as you know, was 14.6. We're looking to reduce it 1.3, and there's two components of that. There's the expected where we think it's going to be at the end of this year, the claims on the history on where the claims in the OPEB, not the OPEB, I'm sorry, the stop loss comes in, that it's not going to be as large of a use of that fund balance. So the level of fund balance is higher, will be higher expected unless there's some other major claim come in. But in talking, it doesn't seem like we expected the high claimants to come down versus go up right now. So the two components I'm talking about in that is regards to what's in the fund balance now with the 40%, 60% split that the Board of Ed has to keep versus the town. And if I'm going into the weeds, let me know to cut me off. So the expected claims for next year, that's at 120%, and that's how we work out the 40, 60%. So when you do those numbers, there's excess funds in those fund balance that could reduce that so that we keep the level of the 40%. And then as the months go on, there's somewhat of an expectation that the claims are going to come down somewhat of the value of the claims for next year, that the numbers may change. That's the secondary one that we estimated. But the bottom line is, no matter what happens, the internal service fund, wherever it goes, the board has the ability to do an appropriation if we needed to, above and beyond that, because the board has to keep the 40%, the town has to keep the 60% in their fund balance, and anything above and beyond that, again, between that, right now, the delta is, that number is about $2.93 million for that 40, 60% split. Above and beyond that, again, the board has an ability to do a budget appropriations. So that's where that number was coming from.
Did you skip the other OPEB?
OPEB and, oh, did I skip one?
The retiree claim one. You mentioned the first one, but I don't remember you covering the town pension side.
I
The 150, the
I
other
brought
150.
I brought the pen, unless I'm confused. So the
It's the one above the one, it's the one above the 1.3, the 150.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry. I did to do that. That's our estimated right now when we're using it in calculation. The 150 is what we're saying we're going to take of retiree claims.
Yeah.
And we're going to take retiree claims and actually use the trust to pay those up
good.
to 150,000
Good.
of retiree claims
Very good.
without affecting any other numbers to with the ADAC.
and that's because of the level of funding of both of
Correct.
those accounts. So
Correct.
we set them up for that purpose. Now we're using them for that purpose.
Right. And then every year we
Glad
can
that
see
worked,
based
huh?
on the funding level of the trust, how much we can absorb to start building it up, that both sides, town and Board of Ed, can have the retirees paid.
Just on the Board of Ed expenses for health insurance, I think it's really important to communicate. We will pay 100% of the insurance claims that they have.
Yes.
We just don't know what they'll be.
And well, the effect is going to be the internal service fund,
I
not the
appreciate it.
general fund.
Right.
So whatever the general fund is set, it doesn't affect anyone. The internal service fund is the one that's going to have the effect of, we make it whole if we feel it drops below the 40, we got to bring it up the 40 and the 60 on the town side.
I understand. I just want to make it really clear, and this board's very supportive of whatever the health and expenses are, the town will pay 100%.
Okay.
And I know that 18 months from now, in May of 2023, if there's a question, we do a special appropriation. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
All right.
ultimately, it doesn't, we're trying to equalize it out for the taxpayer, but knowing that whatever happens at the end of it, that the board has the ability to do an
Perfect.
appropriation to make
No,
sure
no,
the internal
all right.
service fund is whole.
Okay, so the liaisons have not had this conversation. You've had this with Joanne.
No, after I had the conversation with Joanna, I started trying to do the numbers up because I didn't
All
know
right.
all the details of the numbers to make sure I was doing the split of that policy, to make sure I had the right numbers on that policy.
Here's what I would suggest, if everyone's okay with this. This is the one thing that we have to make sure we're perfectly aligned on. We have this week to get it done to make sure we can have a conversation, so we can vote on this thing Tuesday.
Just to add into, this is kind of new information for me.
Right,
sitting
okay.
here right now.
Okay,
So we did have an opportunity today to get on the phone, and myself and Joe.
okay.
But I really need to feel comfortable with it, to be honest with you, because.
Yeah, I get it.
No,
Everyone's good with that.
not budget at 100%. They cannot budget with an anticipated deficit. And that's where we were last year at this time.
Yeah, okay, well, let's just get that nailed down this week. So that we don't, again, we're not voting on anything tonight. This is all just to get ready for that. So, okay. On Tuesday. Okay. What else?
Do you want, you go, or I can do it?
Sure, you could do the top one. And I'll do the bottom.
No, go on. Go for it.
So just down to the revenue side. These are just grants that we've kind of adjusted to match what we're expecting to actually receive from the state. The first one being educational cost sharing grants, which we adjusted down $1,500 from 409,000 to 407. And secondly, the municipal revenue sharing, which we're not expecting to get this coming year. So we reduced that down from 136 down to 0.
Okay.
Beyond that, the only other changes outside of the general fund are to the pool fund, which is just an adjustment made to increase the amount spent on maintaining the pool, both in the property cleaning and outside service outside contract services, up 17,000 and 12,000 respectively, and just reducing the amount that's going into contingency from their surplus of revenue for next year.
That's it.
That's it.
So through that effort, about $2 million reduction in expense.
Correct.
Okay. And do you have, well, why don't we stop right there? Questions on this page? Any questions on this page? Pretty straightforward.
I have a question. So last time we met, we were talking about contributing money to the ISF by taking money from the pension fund. I think you were going to explore whether that was going to be possible to do. Is that reflected here?
That's not
1.3?
reflected here because the committee itself, the investment committee overseeing it, has to explore that option with them first before they bring it in front of this board. So they need time to go through it all to see what it would, they'd have to do it before the July 1st. They wouldn't be able to do it because of the timeline that this rollover was done was based on July 1st, 2021. So the next valuation per se would be July 1st, 2022. They would have to make the decision before July 1st of this year with that fully funded number.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, any questions? Do you want to, what does it mean? Do you have the,
Sure. So I can't share my screen, unfortunately, but so we had started at, I believe it was 6.5% of an increase over last year's total expense. And with those changes implemented, it's down to a 5.07 increase.
on the expense side?
On the expense side, yep.
Okay. What's the amount on taxation?
The percentage increase is 3.79, and it's 145.5 million.
And what's the increase in the mill rate percent?
2%.
2% increase in
To
the mill rate.
18.5.
18.53. That's the number. Okay. Okay.
18.53.
53. That's this.
This version.
This
Version.
version, I
Yeah,
was just
exactly.
going to say, we'll get there.
All right. So that assumes Board of Ed operating as is.
Well, that assumes Board of Ed operating going up 150 to match.
Up
what-
150
make
for
sure
the
that it
for the
matches their
subs.
budget.
To
Yeah,
match
that's
their,
right. Yeah, that's what I mean.
budget,
But
yes.
otherwise, as is.
Yes.
And that includes what amount of contribution from the general fund to pay down taxes?
5.
So 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
And assumes the collection rate of.
98.5.
So over the 3 recommendations you guys put in, right? So we're using the pension funds and the OPEB funds to offset our costs, which is why we have them, right?
Yep.
And we're staying at 98.5 at this point, and then $5 million draw on the
Fund balance.
fund. What's our fund balance right now?
In June 21, it was 29 point, don't quote me, 29 point something in June of 21.
2.7 maybe.
Okay, thank you. And then right now, we're not going to draw down the full amount of what this
Right.
year is. So net pulling down the 5 for next year and what we're doing now, we're probably only going to take it down about $2-3 million. So we'll end up about 26 undesignated around 26 million.
Okay. And
So we think it's gonna be 31 at the end of this year and then take it down 5 to get down to 26. Is that right?
Correct.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so with just, I'm thinking how, because people always say, oh, the fund balance is so big, but let's think about this. So we want to keep 10% of our expenses. You know, if it's if we have a 160 million budget, is that right? So about 16 million is just, you know, our liquidity that we try to keep for the rating agency, just kind of like our baseline, right? So of that.
Correct.
Okay, and then we also are the internal services fund.
We need to keep about 2 million. Let's round off to 2 million. We need to keep right now in internal service fund,
Okay.
our 60%.
And then we have another. And what other, do we have any other, and we draw down, say 4 a year. I'm just trying to get to kind of where we really want to make sure that fund is at a minimum. So you have a 16 million, just our 10% savings account, with another 2 million, 18 million, more or less, for the internal services fund, right? And then we have, say, 4 million that we want to have available if we want to roll it into next year's, like we do with this to pay down, right? So that gives us just 22-ish on the low side of kind of what we need to operate with. And that's without us saying we're going to allocate any other of these funds to certain purposes. I'm just, because people talk about the dollar amount on it, and I just think we need to think about where we really want it to be at a minimum.
Yeah, and so basically, even though we say we draw down 4 or 5, we only been drawing down like 1 or 2, right? Because we're going to end up at 31, right? This year, we didn't project to end up at 31. We're going to project to draw down 5 to get down to 26, but my gut is we're going to be drawing down less than 5. So we'll still be at the end of 2023, something like 28, 29, 30 is my gut. Because we always say we'll draw down 5 and end up drawing down 2, right? Is our historical.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, we got a lot of capital to pay for.
It would
So
be good to have for Tuesday, just for us to, or you could even send it out in advance. What has been the actual drawdown last 5 years?
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
a
we
good.
budget 5 and we did none. We added 1 year. We drew down 2 million, 1 million, half a million. I mean, whatever they are, it would be just good to know that we always throw those numbers around, but I'm not sure we actually really have them right. So let's get an actual.
Well, it
number.
doesn't always come out what we think.
Well, the history
It ha-
is the
yeah,
history.
not
I mean,
bad,
can't
yeah.
change that.
That's right.
Not bad. Okay. Other questions on where we are? I said the Board of Ed operating expense actually is going up and I got no reaction from anybody wow.
Can I just go back? This is a small sum, but I thought that the Board of Ed approved the additional subs now in this year's budget. So where is that there's an increase? I thought that was already.
It wasn't an increase per se. It was the fact of when we picked up their number for their budget, either their budget wasn't final or we didn't pick up the final document.
Was that what?
So
Okay.
when it,
So it's
because
our
they had some,
side.
no, it's our side.
All
So
right.
that when their final presentation in front of us, we noticed the number is different. And that's when we noticed it was one particular line item that we needed to make sure we added on that was a salary related and a taxes, I think, right?
Yeah.
Social security taxes.
So we're just.
We're making sure we have what they actually approved in their budget.
The change is going from $100 a day to $125 a day for our itinerary subs.
Yeah.
So that cost is what that will.
That's
take.
what I.
It's under
read.
50,000. Yep.
Yeah.
Carried across the entire system.
So that was just a glitch. That was.
Yeah, it was the timing of us.
It was a timing.
It was timing on us picking up their number.
By the Board of Ed between the first and second.
Okay.
I have another question, and maybe you could re-explain this because I went over my notes and it's not clear. I think you said that there were 86 children who are students who were not up to par in reading. And so we have the grant for 2 years, but we will have an addition of 4 teachers at the end of the grant. Is that correct? Are we cutting 4 teachers somewhere else to make up for that? Or is this just an additive?
So academy you're asking?
Yeah.
That is over the phase-in plan is a 3-year phase-in plan. That will
Right.
result in 4 teachers at the end of that. And we're using grant money to do that incrementally over the 3 years. As we do.
But is there a plan to reduce somewhere else?
No, that's an additional service to those children at the elementary level who are struggling readers and identified in our special education program.
We've had struggling kids that haven't read well for as long as I can remember.
It's time to fix that.
Well, I concede that, but, and perhaps even sooner, but can we not find other efficiencies? I mean, 4 teachers, that's real money. I mean, the grants are only 2 years, right?
Sure, sure. It's spread out across the 3 elementaries, right? So there's
Oh,
one, two,
I get that, yeah.
one oversees that.
And part of the, excuse me, Brian, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Part of the phase-in plan will be to evaluate, do we need the full 4 teachers or do we not need the full 4 teachers? Based on the needs of the students. But this is really trying to take a look at what we have in place in terms of our instruction for reading, and then take it to the next level so that we can truly address, these student needs at the earliest level possible, so that we don't have the long-term implications as the students progress further and further into their academic career. The sooner we address it, the better off we're going to be, because, we know that they start out with reading goals and writing goals, but then you start adding math goals in there, because reading begins to, have impact on math, and the services build over time. So, the goal of this is to provide the highest quality service we can, through this literacy academy, to really try and remediate as quickly and as soon as possible, which is what the research tells us to do. And this is an attempt to do it in a very highly concentrated with dedicated teachers whose responsibility is solely around the reading, rather than being more of a generalist special ed teacher where for one part of the day or one period they're working on reading, and then they're going to go work on math, and then they're going to go work on executive functioning skills and go back and do reading. Their sole focus will be around teaching reading all day long, basically in a very highly respected program using the Orton Gillingham method, along with having that OG fellow, which is a rare opportunity for a public school to have. So our goal is to attack this early and remediate it as quickly as possible.
Okay. So 2% $2 million reduction, sorry, from where we were when we started. Okay, that's good. 2% increase in the mill rate. Do you have changing gears as a click? Do you have a status as to how we're doing year to date? I asked that question. Just in terms of revenue and expenses, we were running a few million ahead on revenue, a few million to the good on expenses year to
Get back
date.
to you next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Say again?
Could get back to you next Tuesday.
Oh dear.
Next Tuesday's fine. That's okay.
Yeah.
Any concerns? No,
No,
just don't
no,
have the
no,
data
no,
yet.
no.
Okay.
Been reallocations on some stuff, yep.
No, it's
Okay.
Moving target with some stuff, but no concerns.
All right.
No.
Understand. Okay. Any other questions on those items? Should we go to the Capitol? Everyone? Anyone? Okay. All right. So Amy, Neil, and Chris, you want to
All right.
orient everybody to this work?
Yeah, and Michael and Bob, sorry, but we'll follow right along, so it's easy. So we just chatted, and we just, like every year, this is kind of what we do, where we look at the capital and we have the selectmen budgets that approved, and I guess it comes to us to see if we can tighten it up. So this is in the effort to kind of look at it, understand, some of this is understanding better, some of it is tightening up. And so we just went through the capital ask by line, and these are just highlighting things that came to us as a thought process. So we went right down in order from the capital ask. So the first thing, the question is, and some of this is it needed? How should it be paid for? Bonded or current or otherwise? The first thing was the task assessor asked for 150,000. And my question on this, I'm not saying that it doesn't have to be done. Is this a real capital expense?
We've always capitalized. I don't know why we.
But should we? I mean, it's, it's 150 this year and 150 next year. Is that correct, Dan? Both years? And so, I don't know, but that's this ongoing philosophical thing, is what should be our base for capitalizing stuff. We're at 50. I've been trying to push it higher, but this one just seems, I mean, what do we amortize it over 5 years?
We do amortize it over 5 years because the next reval starts in 5 years.
Right.
So it is amortized over that length of time on it.
Yeah.
I've seen towns do it both ways.
Okay. I've
seen towns, yeah.
that's just a raising. It's kind of a philosophical question.
Well, this is another one. Let's go through it
Okay.
because whatever we come back with, if we're going to move to current, it's going to change
Okay.
expenses, which are going to change the mill rate and so forth and so on, right? So we'll have to make sure we understand. That's
Yeah.
that's a good question. Okay.
Okay. The next one was the Emergency Management Command Center, which was presented, I think it was last week. And we didn't have a line item for the budget unless you guys put one in. And the thought was maybe this is a 2-year. It take like a year to figure out what you want and order it. And so a suggestion would be to put 30,000 in or a number like that, so people can have the money they need to kind of go out to budget. And then in the next year, whatever the balance is, 120,000.
Does
I just
everyone
know,
remember they didn't quite have it ready and we didn't know
I guess that was
the details.
That was
They were-
150.
It was 150,000
Yeah.
total.
total.
Yeah.
Total. So the idea was that's gonna be the cost over 2 years. So it was the idea, we talked about giving them enough money to kind of go forward. So I just popped it in. It's a little amount, but I just thought we should look at it.
I made a note of that and I wasn't clear and I sent it to Tucker. Were they supposed to come back as a special appropriation when they had final numbers? Or were we going to?
I don't recall. I'm sorry.
That was
that's what
my
we-
note. I don't know if that's accurate, but I thought they were coming back.
So don't put it in. They would come back for a special
That was
appropriation.
my.
Which is fine.
notes, and I wasn't.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah.
Get rid of that. Right.
Yep.
Okay. And again, these are just things that caught our eyes. The town steps, the 130,000 on that, and I talked to Tiger about it to get a little more backstory on that. I was just thinking, wait a minute, we just built this building. How come this is a big capital expense? And I guess they didn't redo the steps at the time, and there's a long-term water issue. So it's completely appropriate for this to be capitalized.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. These are just some suggestion. The NICVAC generator, 86,000. Sounds like a terrific ARPA project to me. Just throwing that out there. I mean, it's exactly health and safety and stuff like that. And so I'm just throwing that out there. And then waive it.
Well, okay, yeah, let's go
Okay,
through them. Let's go through them.
But
Then we come
that's
back.
worth.
Let's just come back to them.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, that's, a good use of funds for ARPA. Which isn't to say the other things aren't, but it's a very clean use of ARPA funds.
What do people want to do? Do you want to talk about each one of them or do you want to go through the whole list
Let's
and come
talk
back?
about each one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thoughts on the, well, I guess the question is, it could be an ARPA project, but there's a lot of competition for ARPA money. So why would we why not put it on the list? If you're on the committee, if it makes the cut, it makes the cut. If it doesn't make the cut, we would bond $86,000 probably for a generator the last 10 years.
We've talked about this forever and really it is a good use of funds.
Yeah.
You need the generator. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
urgent. So
Yeah.
this is,
Forever.
Well, it's this, and then go down below the Waveney generator as well, which is at Latham.
That's
It
another.
was down a couple.
Right, but if we were to move this off of capital, make it an ARPA fund thing, does that affect the timing? In other
Could I ask a
words,
question, Tiger? Is this to separate the EMS from the police department? If we don't separate them, we don't need another generator. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't do that as part of the police department project.
We could.
okay, it's not urgently needed
No,
now.
no.
It's totally connected to that.
They're connected to the police department.
Okay, so we can just take that out.
Take it out.
take it out.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's great.
That
That's
was
a- that's a
why we
productive
hadn't
conversation.
Oh, we have
approved
these
it
meetings.
sooner. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Waveney.
All right. Waveney, and this, it could be that I missed part of the meeting when they went over to Waveney. I just wanted to understand, this is not a bigger question of how we're using Waveney, but what this money is going for. And I did double check with Tiger. Tiger, correct me if I'm wrong. So this expense, the 990,000, would allow us to put in the ADA bathrooms. That's what this is going to do, right? Okay. Our previous, and I'm just trying to make sure we all understand what money we put in Waveney, excluding the outside and the roof and all that stuff. The previous ARPA, ADA work we did kind of made the whole first floor that you could get around, right? And it also gave us the fire escape and then the entrance. Is that fair? Okay. And then what has to happen next is to be able to get from the first floor to the second floor and potentially the elevator, which would be 40 a year. Is that correct?
I'm sorry.
It would be after this, you get these done, and then the next thing would be to get the elevator in, right?
That's the way it's slated right now, the scheduling, yeah.
Okay, so that gets us to sorry, ADA usability for Waveney, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure
Okay, that's why we're
what this was going to cover. So I just thought we should know. And so that's why it popped up to me. So,
That's a keeper.
okay, so, all right. The next project that popped out to us was the Powerhouse. And, we have a process. Things are in the capital plan for a while. You look at it. This thing kind of came up recently. I think it, in my mind, it needs to be vetted more in terms of the whole project, who it serves, the need, et cetera. So I would, at this point, pull this out. I would recommend pulling it out and doing more work in it and maybe look at it in future years.
Is
That's just my
that-
opinion.
That's the only Powerhouse item. This other one isn't the Powerhouse, right?
No,
It's the theater.
yeah.
It's just theater.
Yeah.
It's not it. So the question is, that's that whole project. Was that the $1.5 million?
Oh, I see. I thought the Powerhouse can shoot.
Was that the bathrooms or was that the?
No.
That was
that's the
just-
one that-
Tiger, why don't you come up?
It should have been labeled movie theater.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the first
No,
one here.
the next one should
First
say
one-
movie
the
theater.
First one is the Powerhouse.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that one. So the.
Yeah,
Sorry, the
this
second
on
one
the
should say
stage.
movie
It's
theater.
okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. On the Powerhouse, just let's refresh everyone's memory on that one. That was a larger project, right? There was
A
a
very large project.
bathroom, a
A foyer.
portico, foyer, a roof.
And a suggestion that the Powerhouse would take over the potting shed, and an alternative bathroom would be funded separately. So it was a lot of moving pieces, right? And a lot to digest, and I just don't think it's ready for prime time.
So that's the question for the team. Is it really vetted to move now? Do we want to get more information and not include it at this point? What are people's thoughts?
Tiger, why don't you summarize what their project has ended up being as far as what because the selectmen said, move this forward. So the Board of Finance can move it forward and the town council can move it forward. They want to begin a fundraising project toward $1.2 million project. So can you summarize where the dollars ended up?
Excuse me. Yes, so we had originally we had two separate projects. We had a bathroom that we wanted to put in the potting shed, and they had a project where they wanted to expand their lobby, and we were going to put in 88 bathrooms inside. It originally started as an 88 bathroom project inside the Playhouse, then trying to figure out how we were going to do that without taking away their office space or their lobby. It got a little bit difficult trying to expand to make ourselves ADA compliant there. Then they asked us to take a pause and see if they could then work on this plan that they had back from 1983 to expand the lobby and still tackle the bathrooms at the exact same time and not lose their office space, keep it all on the first floor. And subsequent to that, we had the idea of putting bathrooms in the potting shed. At that time, I said, why don't we look at it holistically as a campus and have one architect look at the entire area. So in so doing, they looked at it and said, we could make the potting shed a black box theater, rehearsal space, place for kids to, have classes in there for theatrical things like that. And then they could build a small adjunct to the existing building for the bathrooms and not use the potting shed for the bathrooms. They use a different one. At that point in time, said, okay, what does that look like? And funding wise, originally they said for us to renovate the potting shed and put bathrooms in it was $250,000. Okay. So they said then they decided, okay, if we want to renovate this to put our responsibility, town's responsibility would be to renovate it and put a floor in it in the potting shed, and then put a secondary area or an expansion of the existing facility to put outdoor bathrooms in. What would that number be? It turns out to be right around 250, 260. Okay. 110 to do the potting shed, 150 to do the new bathrooms, 260. The 260 was a little bit elevated on its costs. So we said 250, call it a day. At that point in time, the Board of Selectmen approved ARPA funding to go forward, and I think it passed this body and made it to the Conservancy, and made it to the Town Council, who passed it and said,
For the bathrooms, the
For the-
250 for the
for
bathrooms.
250 for the bathrooms.
Right, for
You
the
didn't,
bathrooms.
it wasn't specified location. The council made a specification as to, you can have the money, but we haven't decided where we want to have it yet. Be it in the potting shed or this adjunct building. Subsequent to that, the town players came in with their plan for an expansion of their lobby.
Right.
Approximately $1.2 million or so. A little bit of money to do the potting shed, and then the majority of it to do the expansion of the lobby. And then they asked for ARPA funds for that. And that passed the Board of Selectmen at a $250,000 limit, but it hasn't come to this board or the council yet. So that $1 million ask that they have is still sitting now, where they're going to be looking to raise money and then subsequently, hopefully get ARPA funds for that, or other grants.
So
to
what
then-
is, maybe I'm confused now. What is this 250 for?
That 250 should be removed, I think, or is that 250 to help them? I'm
You
trying to
answered
remember
my question.
myself.
You answered my
We
question.
went back and forth.
Next
you know,
item.
so-
I mean, if we're not ready for prime time, it's okay. We're not
It's
we're not
okay.
actually bonding anything tonight, people. I mean, we're just trying to get a plan together.
But
So-
let's be clear. I thought this is the bathroom.
No, this is not.
No.
It was the bathroom originally, then it stayed in there, and then it should be removed
Not
because
ready.
Not the interior bathrooms. Those are
No,
already
the
funded.
ex-
Those
the
are
ex-
already funded.
the exterior
88.
bathroom, that got approved through ARPA.
Yep.
No, but there's 250 plus 250.
No,
ARPA for the addition for the,
250 plus 250, the 250 for the bathrooms got approved already.
Yeah,
And that
that's
was
it.
what this number was originally, because it changed to 260, whereby I was going to split it, right? I was going to split the 110 and the 150. So this number is actually not the money for the potting shed. It was for the, no, I'm sorry. It was money for the potting shed, not for the playhouse.
Okay, so
Am I right or am I
no,
wrong?
I figured you're wrong.
I'm wrong? Tell me I'm
We ended
wrong.
up with 250 and 250
Correct.
and they were satisfied with that.
But who's they?
again,
Who is they?
what's the 250?
This is the bathroom. This is the bathroom, whether it's built in the potting shed, or if they come up with the money to take the potting shed, we'll build it as the addition to the
Kevin,
other.
I actually think the bathrooms was the first round of ARPA funds that
Right.
you guys put forward, we approved, you guys approved, right?
Yeah.
The second batch of ARPA hasn't come our way yet,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think in your second one, you guys were proposing to give them additional money
No,
for
we're
the
coming back with
expansion,
the 250
right?
for the
What?
Am I right on it?
bathrooms.
For their project.
Yeah,
Correct.
anyways, I just think the
And we had, and we
it's
were
pretty in
carrying.
infancy stage. So
Sorry,
to put
we were-
it
and we were-
250 is a
Yeah,
lot.
we were carrying this money in case that didn't go through. This was carried for it.
But let me make a suggestion. I think
Sure.
for now, let's just remove it. We have a week. Right? If you come back and say, okay, now here's the whole deal and this is the situation, we can have a conversation. Again, we're not approving anything tonight. We just have to
That's
get
fine.
clarity, and that one's an open switch. So I mean, I suggest we can keep talking about it, but let's get the facts. And it sounds like it's not quite ready for prime time. It doesn't mean we can't do it and we can't have a capital, a project approved and part of a bond fund 6 months from now. It's fine.
But just to be clear, $260,000 has been
250.
250 allocated from the first round of ARPA. So that money is already reserved.
For bathrooms.
For,
Somewhere.
Which was
in the
gonna be,
Powerhouse
in
fund.
general, was gonna be the
No, no,
potting
no.
shed
Keep in
and
mind,
then,
The interior ADA bathrooms have already been approved
have
previously.
been, right.
That money's already been authorized last year.
It hasn't been spent yet.
Hasn't been spent.
Right.
The outdoor bathrooms is what the ARPA funds for the public use,
Correct.
whether they're in the potting shed or whether they're in an addition to the other building.
TBA.
So-
Correct.
Are there 3 bathrooms?
No,
there's so many
two.
bathrooms.
Well,
Okay, let's move on. We don't have the facts. It's fun to
There are
guess.
3 piles of $250.
We got that. I got that.
Yeah.
I got that. Okay, Tiger, you okay with that? Let's just make sure we all understand.
Okay.
But you're suggesting we remove it anyway.
That's a lot of piles.
Well, I thought it was for the bathrooms, but Kevin's right. It was actually for their expansion. Our
Thank you.
our portion of their expansion.
But we haven't
Sorry.
approved this expansion, have we?
No, that's, but
No.
they would like you to because it
Right.
already went, they wanted to go to the Board of Selectmen, you and the town council in this budget season. If we're
It's
not,
not
if we
gonna
can't get there by next Tuesday, we're not going to do it
That's
until after the budget season. So.
Okay.
It's okay.
They,
Okay, moving along.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, just as a suggestion, the Waveney Park generator in Latham Center, which needs to be replaced and is one of our critical
yes.
places.
It's our.
It would be a grand use of ARPA funds, just throwing that out there.
Is it approved for ARPA or not?
It could be.
It could be.
Is this, if this is urgent, why don't we just get it done? I don't know why we'd
Yeah, I
wait.
mean, I
It's
guess
the
that
kind of
would-
thing where I hear Waveney and I hear generator. What do we?
This is the Lapham Community
Lapham.
Center, which is actually our shelter.
Yeah.
Of
And
course, yeah.
the-
Move it to
and
ARPA.
Have-
Good idea.
Move it to
But
ARPA?
Is moving it to ARPA, does that jeopardize it all the time?
That's the question.
No, it doesn't.
Right now, this money would not be available until July 1st. We could do it right now. That generator is
Right now
subject
with
to
the
failure.
ARPA.
But
Right,
I'm
that
just
generator's
saying,
got to
so by
knock in the
moving it
engine.
to ARPA, we're not just moving it to another who's on first.
No, it gets
conversation
done.
2 weeks
No,
from
it gets
So
done,
last another
right?
year.
Well, we,
Guys, can we just, are we gonna, I think we're approving, get
It's
it
fine.
done and then we replenish the 125. That's what you're saying with the ARPA money? I think that's okay.
That's
So let's not
good.
wait.
Right,
No,
that's fine.
right.
Okay.
We all
That's
agree,
current.
right?
That's current.
Yeah, that's
So
easy.
let's move it to current.
And that's ARPA and let's order it. It hasn't been ordered.
So it can
Right.
get done right away.
Okay.
Next item, small one, and this was more a point of clarification. I didn't know what the Waveney Tea House was, which is that we're calling 60,000, and that is, correct me if I'm wrong, Tiger, it's the freestanding structure kind of by the garden.
we're going to lose it if we
Correct.
don't start repairing it.
No, I don't, I'm just trying to make sure people know what it is. That's,
You can, yeah, they call it the tea house. Some people call it the gazebo. Some people call it a belvedere.
Got
It's
it.
really a tea house.
yeah, that was more just a point of edification. So that's that.
So just assuming that's capital, keep it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The next one is the Nature Center Audubon House, a recommended $200,000 expense. I don't have the Nature Center says they have some purpose for using it. I don't really have the information yet on that. I think this kind of moved up. If we could push it back, didn't get more information later budget season. That's just a suggestion. And again, I'm not judging things, but that's what they put us in this situation. We're supposed to go through this stuff and kind of say, should we or should we not? So that's,
This was not in the 5-year.
It got shelved from last year to this year, or from previous years. If we don't start to act on the building, we're gonna have problems with that building. I received a letter today from Bill Flynn, Executive Director, detailing out what they're gonna do with it, and then a revenue stream being generated from it. And the thought is that that revenue stream they would utilize to put back into the property itself. So they've got a capital expenditure plan now that they're working towards, where they want to put in some new boardwalks. They've got a couple of their own structures that they need to maintain, and some other work that they want to do on the property itself. And then any monies that they generate through here from programming for 2s, 3s, or 4s, those age of children, then they would bring that back into the facility and replenish their capital improvement fund, and then continue to utilize that to drive capital improvements in and of the park. So I can send you that letter that I got, that
But you're
kinda
right. This
details it
was
out.
an abandoned building. It was the laundry house. It's never been used.
oh,
And then-
that's it's the laundry house, the one
Yeah, yeah,
sitting in the middle that they thought had taken down?
Yeah.
It
$200,000 on
definitely
that?
needs work.
Well, the point is, I mean, you're either going to use it or tear it down. And they would like to add it to their program. So
Exactly. And a much needed program as well. They have a wait list. They've got people waiting to sign up for the program. The moment that we put this building back in use, it'll be filled at that point in time. And then it'll generate revenue back in, and which will actually help to then fund capital projects in and of the park. So that's all can stay, can always stay there.
Are they contributing to this project?
They would help with we're only taking care of the outside. They would take care of the interior fit out for what they needed for their purposes.
I actually do recall discussion on this. I don't think it's a total surprise. I do agree. You either use it or you take it down. I mean, it's,
yes, number 56 on the 57 list.
well, I know, I'm not saying,
But you propose to have it.
We now have an empty
I'm just asking, who's advocating?
But the thing,
they are.
nature center.
The nature
They are.
center is,
but
they have.
we don't have the
definitive need
presentation.
for it.
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
No, we haven't gone.
you know, I mean, the process is
Not
that if we're
really.
supposed to do something like this, we're supposed to have it laid out so we really understand it. And we don't have that information at this point. And I thought that was a building that really,
I thought it
you
was
know,
being
didn't
torn
have
down.
a,
Well, that's our
But
fault.
that-
If we set a threshold of $200,000, you have to have a presentation as part of this. We didn't do that.
Yeah.
So
No, we did not.
no, there wasn't a number threshold, but like as a significant capital thing, you know, how could we got nothing to,
Board of
Based on-
Selectmen
Okay,
have a
again, I
presentation?
think,
we didn't have a presentation to the Board of Selectmen. We just know that
Oh,
Right.
they've been talking about it for a while.
You're right.
have a use for the
This has been, this did not arise. This has been a multi-year
Yeah.
discussion that we've had with it. And it actually got shelved because of COVID, to be perfectly honest with you. We had been speaking of this about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it just, because of COVID, it didn't go because they were also looking at that point in time, not bringing in anyone else. Everything that they were doing was outside,
Right.
not in a building. So why renovate a building? Now they're coming back to the point where, they're bringing kids back inside, and there's a definitive need in and around the community for this age group.
well, we certainly can't bond it without a lot more information. Whether we carry it on as on a long list of things that we want to consider, we could do that. Can I just suggest maybe like we need more information to move forward on it. So I don't want to have people come away from this meeting, say, oh, the Board of Finance approved this. We haven't approved anything. We haven't seen anything. If there's a business case, that's great to know, but I don't know it. We haven't seen it. What do people think? Just-
You want to hear it next Tuesday? 10 minutes?
Well,
Could certainly
sort
have,
of 10
they
minutes.
would certainly have him come in and talk. I mean, he
It's a little 11th hour at
And-
that point.
No, but it's.
not really.
From their point
Public
of,
hearing.
from their point of view, it's not 11th hour. Yes, so.
Well, no, I mean, if they come in
Yeah.
and talk as part of the public hearing, are you going to give them 10 minutes versus?
So
2
let's ask
minutes
this
to
question.
everybody else?
What's the harm in keeping it in? Let's ask that question first.
I keep it in. I mean, the next thing you're going to find out is it's beyond repair and it has to be torn down. I mean, I think now's the time
It's
to.
the law.
You could also have-
Keeping it in does not mean it's going to happen.
You could also have
That's
a
right.
presentation to the town council and they could cut it out because they have to approve it. So.
We're not
True.
actually bonding it and
No,
getting a project
No, but
going.
it can't get to the town council
Yeah.
unless you.
I understand. I'm just saying, that's my point. What's the harm in keeping it in for now to keep the conversation going? And use the next 6 months to sort out the business case, let the town council, maybe you guys have an opportunity to have that conversation with them. That's not a bad idea. I mean, if we take it out right now, it sort of ends it for a cycle, which I'm not sure was the intention. It's just that we don't know what it is. So we certainly can't approve it. What we could certainly keep it live by moving it.
I
actually,
agree
yeah, we
with
actually
that.
held it so it would be in the cycle, right? So, because we lost the cycle last year, so we then held it to come into the cycle
I
this year.
understand.
I don't want to see it.
Yeah, but
Just-
You understand, it's 200,000. We just don't have the details. that's
Just go
all.
back to the process though. For example, the Waveney Park generator, right? Unless the town council approves it as a project, we don't have a project. We can't move anything like that forward. So
Well, that's why it's
So,
keep staying.
yeah,
I
yeah.
understand.
All right.
There's just not a lot of support for this. It's not that it's a bad idea. We just don't know.
I
That's all.
understand.
Okay, so
No.
well, let's assume,
I agree.
go with that plan. Just leave it in as a due diligence is still required. Everyone seem to be okay with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Victor's not giving me the,
That's
okay,
good.
all right. Okay,
All right. Next line item was just the Nature Center, Visitor Center, and this was more point of edification. It was $60,000. And I was like, shoot, didn't we just spend a bunch of money there? But I guess the money we spent there, approximately, Tiger, correct me if I'm wrong, 125,000 was to structurally shore up the building. This is actually the roof, right?
The
a roof is a roof.
Roof,
Right.
straight.
If it's due, it's due, or
No, no,
you
I
punt
know.
it for a year. Yeah.
But it wasn't clear to me.
Right.
And so in the roof it's 20 year? I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah,
it's got to happen.
It's done.
Okay.
It's leaking, actually. So.
Oh, that's not, okay.
Which building?
Visitor
The
center.
Visitor Center.
newest
There's actually
building.
2 roofs at the Visitor Center. A couple
Oh.
years ago, we did the older
Yeah.
roof. This is the newer expansion that they had done. In between that time, the structure itself was starting to bow, starting to fold out. We had cabling inside it. We couldn't tighten the cabling anymore. So then everyone gave us enough money to do an interior reinforcement of the main building. As you walk in, you'll see the reinforcement in the front of it. It's pretty innocuous at this point in time, but we performed that work last year. Now we're coming back in to do the second part of the roof, or the other half of the roof that needs it now.
Okay.
Moving this along, flipping over.
So it's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, all right.
This says Powerhouse. It should say the movie theater. there was just a big line item in there, none of it,
All right.
that, you know, there wasn't
You mean Playhouse?
the Playhouse, I'm sorry, Playhouse, run, movie theater Playhouse, whatever. And if I looked at the capital rate, there was not going to be, the proposal was not going to necessarily impact the bonding or the capital at this point. And so this is just we're continuing to look at this.
Well,
But no, there wasn't, I don't think in the budget, I don't think it looked for, there wasn't a line item.
There was a capital request. It's not in the correct.
Correct
line.
category, it's in
It's not in the
other.
correct
Okay, so I looked
category.
at it wrong. It was said other, so is there actually a capital request?
Yeah, that's gonna
Yes.
move into a capital
That's,
request.
it's
Okay,
supposed
because
to
it
be.
said
it's
other,
not-
so I assumed it wasn't a capital
Right.
request.
Well, because there's several,
Pieces.
right, thank you. There are several pieces. So we have the movie fund
Mhm.
that has approximately $800,000 in it.
Right.
And there's an ARPA portion, potential ARPA portion for it. And then there's the town bonded side, or the remaining portion of the capital expenditure for it. So all three of those, so somewhere in here, the number got moved.
Yes, so
And put into an incorrect column. It should be $1 million in the bonded side, not $1.5 million in the other side. Because if you take the movie fund out and the potential ARPA funding out, the remaining funds is about $1 million to seal up the outside and then make the entire building ADA compliant, top and bottom, and then allow it to be utilized as a movie theater again.
There's a group looking at that, isn't there?
They are, yeah,
So this is really, what do we need to do for Tuesday?
well, we have to decide whether or not we want to open a Playhouse with an operator who's willing to sign an MOU with us. So
correct,
But is
Oh,
that
wait.
dependent on 500 or the 1,000,005?
the million.
The 1,000,005. So this isn't
No.
really
Million.
quite cut it.
Just a
Yeah.
million.
Right. And then the utilization of the other funds. But yes, it's $1 million on the bonded side.
on top of the 800,000 sitting in the account,
Correct.
so $1.8 million from us for something that's conceptual right now.
it's not
It's not
conceptual.
conceptual.
It's very
No.
conceptual.
Yeah, we had another meeting with them today. They're very excited. They're looking at a $2 million expenditure themselves in investment of it as well, not just the town at 2.6, they're at 2 million as well to bring the whole thing forward. And then as we get closer, those numbers will probably come down because there is some synergy and there's some overlap on what they're proposing and what we need to do and what they need to do. As we get closer and hire an architect and work together, those numbers will come down. We just wanted to make sure that we were conservative enough to have everything together. But right now it's 2.6 on the town side and $2 million on their side for 4.6, but it should be a lot less than that.
So this is the debate we need to have. Do we want a Playhouse or do we not want a Playhouse?
Well, I think,
Well, this number keeps going up. We're for 500,000, now we're 2.6 million.
Well,
With
some
them
of the-
putting 2
some of
million
the
in.
funding is not.
So
It was-
you
it
said
was-
this is all subject to an MOU. So like anything else, if you have an MOU and you have a deal, then bring it to here and then we can debate it and see if we want to say yes or no. But to say yes or no now is putting the cart in the horse.
Well, we had half of the presentation,
Yeah, we did.
right? We didn't talk about the capital presentation that night. We had the party that wants to operate
We
the
heard
theater.
them out. We made no comments.
Right, and we're working with them to finalize the capital plan, which you need to understand if you're going to move this forward.
That's right. But we can't move this forward if we don't understand the capital plan.
So what is the timeline on that?
yeah.
1 week.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a meeting Thursday with Michael Chen and the people. and
We've been
then-
working with these people
Okay.
for 3 months.
All right, we can have one of those. That's one.
Yeah.
But what is our exposure
This is
then?
the
It
most, this is
should-
the most important item we have to spend some time on between now and next week.
But let's call it what it is. If the exposure is 2.6, it should be 2.6, forget the other and wrap it up and leave that in. And if not, it's 2 million. But have something in there so that you have,
Well,
the
again, between
option.
now and by the time the town council has to approve it, we have
Yeah.
to, everybody has to understand the plan. And we have an operator who's willing to invest $2 million. And we need to understand whether we want to go forward with that plan. The alternative is not,
yeah.
But this
Not very
body
attractive.
shouldn't approve that, send it to in hopes that all the information will be in place by the time it gets to town council. We should know whether we're for it or against it and say, here we are.
I agree.
And to say, we're not too sure, but you guys take care of it when you
No,
get there.
No, I'm not saying
And
that. We
here's a
just,
dustpan and broom.
Okay, this one's an 11th hour one. We're gonna have one of them. This is it. So
Yeah.
we don't have enough to move it. We're not voting anything tonight anyway. So let's just
Do we
recognize
have-
we're gonna have to get a lot of information between now and Tuesday.
Will we have enough to have an executive session
Have that.
either before the hearing Tuesday?
We may want
or
to have a special meeting on
Friday,
this.
or, I mean,
And
we have to have this done by Tuesday, so we have to have a figure here that's somewhat reliable
It's pretty
to send
fast.
to town council, if we agree with it at
Speak up,
all.
Neil.
The numbers are conservative, but they're pretty reliable from where we stand at present. And then we have a meeting on Thursday with the representatives from the company and Michael Chen to go over more of it. And then by that time, but we've been working diligently on this thing for 3-4 months, easy, or more than that, because we worked through other potential people, operators for quite some time. This is probably the best one that we have. It is the best one that we have. I'm actually very excited about this one. I don't get excited very often, but I'm actually excited about this one.
Especially about the Playhouse.
So
All right.
so-
Okay, well, we had a plan. We agreed Michael was going to represent this board to do the due diligence.
Right.
We still don't have any data. So for tonight,
Right.
we're not doing anything tonight.
Right, it was
on
just
this
more
thing.
that I just wanted to point out that I just happened to notice it sitting in the back of the room. And then I texted
Yeah.
Ann and said, whoa. So that's why I wanted to point
It's okay.
that out, that we had.
That's
it.
it.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, because I looked at it, said, oh, okay, they're thinking about this outside of the bonding,
that-
so
that's-
I
it's
just want to be clear, this body's job is not to determine whether the town wants a movie theater.
No.
Our job is to figure out how to pay for it if the town wants a movie theater.
That's right.
Okay, so your job is to figure out if the town wants a movie theater. So that's in your swim lane.
And
Our
actually,
swim lane
it's your
is,
job to decide whether we want.
and
to move.
so I really want to impress upon that. I can have an opinion about it. Tom can have an opinion about it. It's interesting. All matters is if you want one and we want one, we're going to figure out how to do it.
Right.
And if the town wants it, we'll figure out how to do it. Or if the town doesn't want it, we're not going to do it.
Right.
But I just want to be clear about that. Not over to the town council as well on that. Okay, so we're going to have to figure out between now and then, do we need a special meeting? Do we need to have
Right.
if there's something that's confidential, we'll have to sort out. Okay. All right.
Can we get a list of towns that own movie theaters?
They
There are quite a
mostly
few,
sold.
but yeah.
Yeah, there are quite a few.
There are quite a few.
Part of the due diligence, if we have a list of due diligence questions, to Chris's point, we're gonna have an MOU. There's a lot of things we need to know. That's one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we considering an executive session Monday, Tuesday?
We could possibly do
before the
that
meeting,
if that's what's required.
Fridays,
If that's
or
what's
just-
required, we need to.
We
Well,
have to notice.
First question
it.
is, does it anything have to be executive session or can it just be a discussion? I don't know. I don't know what's executive about it. What has to
It
be
would- Well,
confidential?
at that point in time, if you're getting into leases and numbers, yeah, you should.
It's a public
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that what we would see by next week is an MOU or a draft?
They'd like to see it on the other side. And we do have two, backup operators. So that's part of the reason we're still in negotiations.
I see.
So.
all right.
Okay.
I'm not sure where we're going in that, but we're gonna move to the next point.
We need a plan
That's where we're
between,
going.
we're going to, yeah, exactly. Pavement management. Before we go to pavement management, we need a plan between now and next Tuesday. So I guess we'll work with Tiger
Mhm.
and Michael and you, Michael, Tiger, okay?
Yeah, and
You
Tucker
just
too.
take it through. Yeah.
Tucker's.
I will get there. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, the next line item put together is pavement management and repair, which combined is, I think it's 2.25 million. I'm just gonna continue the drumbeat here that if you're spending 2 million plus every year, it's hardly a capital expense. It's an operating expense at some level. And a couple of years ago, we moved part of this expense. I'm not questioning the expense, just how it's paid for. We moved a portion of it, I believe it was $300,000 or $400,000 to current and $5. Okay. And then it was bonded and then we went away from that. It seems to me we should move back to paying for some of this on a current basis. And I would, switch 500 to current and the rest bonding. And then the next year, 700 and 800. And then all of a sudden this bonding expense is not there anymore. I
Well,
think,
it's a $500,000 add to expenses. You can tell us what the impact on the mill rate is and see if people want to do that. I mean, Amy, we're not spending the $500,000, the 2.2 million on the same thing.
what?
Yeah, paving the same spot.
Yeah, but
Whatever you're doing is good for 20 years.
but no, I don't think it is 20 years for all of it.
Well,
So,
it's
Packaged together, it's a 20-year lifespan for that specific road, so that whatever's being done.
yeah, but I guess, when we got to the point to fix the roads, they were in bad repair. So we were in that position. And then all of a sudden it became this, other towns pay for their
How many miles do we have?
pavements.
We have
Current.
125.
And
You know,
what's the
just-
practice of other towns from your experience?
The
And-
majority of them bond.
Darien pays a lot.
programs.
And then it's just,
Some,
you know,
yeah.
15 years or 20
Right.
years.
Yeah, I'm not saying all of it. I'm not saying some is bondable. I think some of it should be considered operating. I'm just,
There's
I,
really no justification for current on this, because these are long-term assets of the town. And so we ought to just stretch them out. They're fixed this year, 20 years from now, they get refixed. And for 20 years, the citizens enjoy a road.
Then you do it again.
And you do it again. I
disagree.
mean, it's,
Yeah, but if you put it into the operating budget, then you're not bonding and you're not incurring interest expense.
no, but you're taxing the individuals.
no, but we, you know, remember, we did try to work our debt expense down. It got pretty high. And part of the reasons it got high, and we did that, the group of us went back and said, how did it happen? And it had, this was part of it. You know, I mean, it's not like we didn't throw the money away. We spent it
Well,
on
that's-
stuff.
It's really ballooned the debt
Yeah.
and special projects, the SACs, library.
Urban Park.
You know,
Yeah.
Irwin Park,
No, we-
this building.
High school.
Yeah, but
police
the Capitol
department,
buildings,
that's
they've,
what balloons the thing.
well,
Not-
you were in the committee with me when we
not
talked about it.
roads.
So
Yeah, but you know, the
Look,
roads.
it's a good discussion. There's two sides of it, right? I mean, we
No,
are.
I can remind people, because I don't think, well, you were, maybe you were, but when we started the road repavement, 05, part of the reason that we did this and moved it to capital to get it started, at least for 10 years, that was the plan at the time, was because the former and current Board of Finance had it in operating every year. And so nobody wanted to spend any money because the operating just ballooned also. So it just never got done. And that's why we were where we were. And I don't have a problem with reducing this or doing part of it in operating, but I would, you know, the flag would go up if you're going to move it all out of capital, because you're going to be back eventually in the same spot.
I'm not saying not spending money.
No, that's my point. Where you pay for it is another risk, because you tend to just keep reducing it if it's all in operating, because I saw it for 8 years. So it was time. We went through this, we moved it.
Really, it comes down to do this year with expense, you know, mill rate up 2%. Do we want to add any more expense?
But
That'll be the question.
That'll always be the question, because
Yeah.
we took it out when mill rates stayed flat, just to keep the mill rate flat.
Exactly.
All right, next line item is sidewalks, 300,000. That's just the typical keep up the sidewalks. That you did get additional ARPA money to expand the sidewalk, which is awesome. I just wanted to highlight that this is just our keep up the sidewalks. The next.
Wait, I'm sorry, Amy, is it this 300 already covered by ARPA?
No,
You're
no,
saying-
no.
No,
ARPA is allowing us to expand the greenway,
Right.
correct?
Right. That's correct.
So this will be
Keep it.
capital keep.
The Waveney Playground, which came up last year, it's back in this year. Again, this is just, I was in the park rec thing. Tom, you were in there as well. My question is it far enough along in how they want to do it that it would get done next year? So it's something that we need to think about more, how to lay it out. Because I know there was a discussion, they weren't exactly sure how to merge the adult workout area with the kids and where it should be. So Tiger, I'm just throwing that out as is it ready for prime time?
Yeah, the last thing would be just to decide on the structures themselves of what you would want for the adult fitness equipment has to be replaced. Right, it's basically at its end. The majority of the expense actually comes down to the poured in place surface. It's actually the surface itself. It's not really the place structures. The place structures are probably half of the money, about $190,000 for the adult fitness area and the children's play area combined, and the poured in place is $170,000. And then we've got an installation cost of around $80,000, and then some incidentals, fencing, curbing, what have you. But Park and Rec, the commission was unanimous in their vote, 11-0, to move this forward. We did shelve it last year.
Yeah.
It's fine. And then, so it came forward again, and I believe they've settled on location exactly where it is now. And then the rest of it just comes down to choosing the structures that you'd like, and then packaging that together and going out to the vendor. Most of these vendors are working off of like a consortium bid, like a Sourcewell bid, where it's already been bid out. You can pick and choose what you'd like.
So they've figured out the issue of how to segregate the adult workout equipment for the kids, because that was in the meeting we had. I was like,
Yeah.
it sounded like they weren't sure how to do that.
They'll be fenced off. They'll be separated via fencing between the two. So
Tyler,
there
how
won't
much
be
of this is the adult equipment and how much for the young kids equipment?
Well, the pour and play surface is shared, right? So, and then if you take everything, it's $70,000 for the adult fitness equipment and $120,000 for the playground equipment. So it's a little like, say, 1.5 times for the playground equipment. Then the rest of it is shared costs, because you basically just got the pour and play surface, curbing, fencing, and the installation. So you might be able to say, well, it's a percentage of each, say a 2/3, 1/3, but the majority of it is, so out of 455, you'd say 2/3, 1/3, maybe, maybe a little less on that. Once you start to break it up, then it actually gets more expensive. If you imagine, I got 2 separate areas, 2 mobilizations, 2 pours, you got a whole bunch of different things going on versus one area.
But you do have the option of just doing the adult as a replacement of something that has to be replaced.
That is correct. Yeah.
And what is the if we take it out altogether, what are we losing? I mean, how many adults use the adult? I mean, I wish I had some numbers.
You have equipment there that has to be
know.
replaced. It's
But could we take it out? Is it a necessary adult playground? I'm just asking. I don't know.
Well, it was also put in for the disabled as well. It's not just an adult fitness area. It's also, compatible for the disabled. That was actually fundraised through SpedNet at the time. They did the entire installation.
And how much is that part of it?
That's
the adult?
Like I said, it's it's
a third or
2/3, 1/3 is kind of hard. Maybe it's a 3/5, 2/5. Probably 2/5 is the adult fitness area, and 3/5 is the playground itself.
Well, could we do that and come back to this and decide at a later time whether it's?
And you're just at that point in time, you're driving costs,
Are you?
right? Because you're gonna be doing a lot of things twice.
Some things twice.
Right. Which
We have a
try to
lot
avoid.
of children's playgrounds though.
Exactly.
Updated, current.
We spent a
top
lot of
the
playgrounds.
line, to all the schools,
Yeah.
Mead
Right.
Park. I mean,
Kiwanis.
Mead is nice. Kiwanis is
Lovely.
nice. Dixon's not used much, but okay.
Right.
but they're lovely. Yeah.
Do we have any numbers on the usage of the adult space?
No, I'm sorry, I do
I
not.
wish we did. Yeah.
It's kind of difficult to quantify because it's, you go there and you see people working on its wide open space. It's not really keyed entry. It's, it's just, it's available. The problem that we have too is that children come and utilize the area. We had a couple of kids get injured on it that we don't want to see, right? One could have been really bad where.
Well, if there's a disability
I just wonder
issue,
kind of with you,
yeah.
Judy, if it's something we can
Yeah.
live without.
well, maybe altogether, but if there's a disability issue, then you have to rectify that. That's a
I wouldn't
risk.
wanna
That's a
take the-
liability.
I wouldn't want to take the fitness area out and not replace it. That's correct.
So
that would be a shame.
that's the bigger.
So it comes down to, the fact that Waveney is the only park that doesn't have, it's our largest park and it doesn't have a playground. That was.
Well, I
the-
don't know that it has to have a children's playground, but maybe this has to, either be updated or.
It was correct.
They all raised money.
They-
Well, then I
With the
then I
runs,
think
right.
we have an
So
obligation.
exactly it. So. yeah.
Sorry, Tucker, say it one more time.
That was part of an effort several
I
years ago,
remember
the All Out for Autism group.
Right.
Right.
Ron Rosenfeld, who owned New Balance, he worked with a couple of families that had children with autism, and they had races for several years to raise the funds to build this
Right.
program, this playground, which was literally designed for children and adults, depending on with any kind of special needs or mobility issues.
That's a different thing.
Okay, that's a
We
different
can
program.
call
But
this,
that's a commitment.
which
Yeah.
is a special needs park.
And there
We
were,
build
The
it
only one around.
to that spec.
and there was money raised for it?
This was,
We could raise the money,
it was
yeah.
completely
That's a
entirely
different-
raised,
Yeah.
was,
And
outside.
we don't have to have a children's playground in every park, but I think if one of the parks had a designated special needs facility, then that would be,
Is this money in addition to what was raised to get the job done? Is this enough?
Well, it's a replacement of the area. The area itself has it doesn't have a poured in place surface. It actually has a mulch down that we have to replace every year.
Right.
And then the playscape, the children's play area would be an addition.
Okay.
So that's new. That would be a new installation.
Wow.
So where's the money that was raised? Was it put into this?
It went to
It
pay
got
for
this.
it.
Gotcha.
It
Okay.
did, yeah, paid for it.
How long did it last?
10 years. It's been a
So,
while. It's been a while since it was put in.
But you would fence this so that if there were kids that were tagging along at baseball games or something, they wouldn't be able to access.
That's the thought, yeah. So that we will put a fence around both because the playscape as well, since it's in the middle of the area, we wouldn't want a kid to stray and then say head towards the road, towards Waveney Road or towards the parking lot.
I don't know that was clear.
No, I didn't know
That's a
any,
different-
I don't
that's okay.
remember any of
That's
this.
a different
yeah.
kind of conversation.
but that does spark a conversation that it's
Mhm.
great when people raise money for stuff. And then I'm just saying, it becomes our long-term obligation. So we got to be careful with that, and then we've seen it there's a number of things in this budget already that it was donated and now it's becomes a fixed cost. So you got to be careful.
What's this? What
That's,
would this
well,
450?
that sparked, sorry, Todd, that
I
sparked
wonder if we
the
could
thought of
send-
having it, where they
we-
come in with an escrow account and things like that when they're of this magnitude. That's sparked the NCAF,
Right.
to be honest with you.
Go ahead, Chris.
Could this board send this item back to Park and Rec and say, we'd like you to reconsider this in the context of
Yeah.
a special needs park only,
Playground.
special needs playground, and then say, come back to us then with a revised budget. And if it's really urgent, needs to be done, we could do it a special appropriation or something like that, but.
Well,
it
it's
needs a little-
capital.
It needs a
It lasts
rethink.
a decade, right? You just said the last.
It lasted a decade.
It'll
or
last a
more.
decade.
That's
So
correct.
this is a capital item. So I guess I put it in the category of Powerhouse. We'll keep it in, but we need more information. There's no reason not to push it forward, but it's not like we're not, we can't approve it just yet because we haven't heard the rest of those details, Chris, that you described. Is the board okay with that approach? Leave it in for now as something that we will consider. We can move on to the town council. They can hear some of the details as well. And then ultimately, when the plans pull together, then we can authorize the spending.
Right.
Is that fair?
Mhm.
Yep. Okay.
That's fine.
That's great.
All right, moving along, and this is just an informational. I just asked Tiger on the Dunning lights, and I completely understand they're very old, 25 years. And I just asked, was the capital amount, the 450, an estimate or kind of a firm number? And I think Tiger, you said you think it's pretty firm, right?
Right. We had a number from Musco for this. We're asking, we're going back to them to try to shore up the number again, but this was the number that we were working off of
Okay.
originally.
Just a couple other things. So, and then a big line item was the Athletic Foundation, $300,000 match, and the Waveney Conservancy, $300,000 match. And I think this is great that we have these public-private partnerships, but we have to we got to be partners in it, right? So, there are not defined projects now. Both groups are working towards it. So to me, I think it would be terrific, and I think I mentioned to Ann, if we could segregate out of our fund balance that 300,000 for the Waveney Conservancy, 300,000 for the Athletic Foundation, and the idea is that our goal is to contribute every year to this, and then we contribute next year, like stay true to this, and then all of a sudden in 2 years or whenever it is, and they come forward with the project that they're looking to match, we have the money sitting there. It's like we're saving it.
That's what this is.
Yeah, but it was in the bonding. It was under bonding. That's why I'm suggesting we consider it not in bonding, but that we actually segregate the funds for it. So kind of like with the sewer, when we have a big capital project, the money's there. And this is, we'll be good on our commitment. We said we'd put the money aside, and then we're only going to spend it when they come back with an actual project.
So
And
you're
I said,
saying-
yeah, release the money.
Well, both the Conservancy and the NCAA both have projects. They both have worked on a 5-year master plan
Right.
and both have projects, viable projects. The NCAF right now, we're actually having Dunning surveyed. It was surveyed during BOE's break last week. gather more information for it and then go forward with the design. And the thought is that June of 23, they'll be coming in because they have a short window of time, basically right after graduation to right before school starts, to be able to go into Dunning and do their work. So they have a plan. We put the pause on it for this year because we didn't feel we would be ready, right? So we're surveying now. We didn't think we would be ready by June in order to try to push forward hard. So they decided that they would wait the year, fundraise the entire time, and then come back in June 23 with their project that, like I said, they have a viable project. They've got a plan already set, and the Conservancy has a list of ones that they want to do this year that Steve just sent to me. I haven't had a chance to review it, but it's similar, very similar, whereby they have they're working through their 5-year master plan where they would draw from these funds as they go.
But you're raising the issue of not bonding it.
Yeah,
Right.
It's like, that's what we talked about, the general fund balance, right? So we don't have to bond because we don't know what's going to happen, but we want to be good for it. So segregate the money.
It's almost like an enterprise fund, but it isn't. I mean,
It's
it's
like
it's sort of going in that direction. I don't know if that's what you're suggesting, or it's like a set aside.
Well, what
It's
if
a
it
set
were,
aside and we
It's a
don't need
set
to bond. We
aside.
have enough cash.
but do you have if you've got the projects,
So you can't,
To assign it,
yeah.
you can assign.
We know they're gonna have the projects.
if you have the projects though, and they are bondable, why wouldn't we bond them?
Well, that's right. That's
Well,
what we've always
because
done. Yeah.
we have the cash to pay for some stuff current. We don't always have to bond it. It's not like
No, it's true.
we have, and it's like, how high do you want your general fund? And to me, if the general fund's getting up there, let's use it for definable capital projects. And then we take some pressure off our debt service going forward.
It's your decision.
Yeah, it's whether you set aside. Yeah, that's different.
It's like what you would do at home.
Yeah, it is a change. Yeah.
We don't do that. And the way you fund that is with taxpayer money.
What exactly? Give me a project that they're talking about right now that's already on the drawing board that's substantial.
Dunning Field.
Dunning Field, the press box and the baking, the snack bar dual
Perfect.
facing, whereby you can, if you're on the water tower turf fields, you can walk across the parking lot and then actually access Dunning Stadium and the snack bar there. So it would actually be open for other, when they have their larger tournaments and venues and stuff,
Sure.
you'd be able to access it on both sides.
What's the ballpark expense? No pun
It's
intended.
big.
2.5 million minimum.
And our contribution,
Right now, we had $300,000 from last year. I got $300,000 in this year. And then probably at that point in time, there'll be another 300 because I'll be hitting the fiscal 24.
I don't know, team. That feels very bondable. Hate to disagree
So
with you.
that's
I
900,000.
mean,
You can bond
Right?
anything. That's not the point.
No,
It's a
you can't bond
philosophical thing of how to spend
it is
it.
philosophical, but that's a big hit to ask for operating expense. I mean,
It's
you
not
really
an
don't.
operating expense if every year we segregate a chunk of money for these things that we know are going to happen.
I mean, every year for $300,000. I get it, but it's money that well, again, it's something we'd have to vote on. We don't have to vote on tonight, but it is a discussion. Great to raise it. Good question. It is a philosophical discussion, but those projects
You
sound,
borrow
they are very
everything else.
bondable. I hear what you're saying. but-
Everything's bondable.
The question I have is the $300,000 we did last year in the $25 million bonding we did, and do we have a line item for the?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
Did we already bond it?
Did we already bond it?
No, we didn't bond it.
I'm
Yeah,
not
but
sure. Was it in there? Definitely.
was-
We asked for it. Did we keep it
It
in?
was authorized, but I don't believe it was issued because we didn't have a project.
Okay.
But we usually fund, pre-fund,
Right,
right?
sure.
And then we pay ourselves back because, but I have an account, so I know at least that portion was done, right?
Okay.
And that's the proposal to just do that again this year. Right?
The proposal, right, would
But the
just be
likelihood
to,
is we will have a project. then.
we definitely have a project come
Got
June of 23. That is correct.
Okay, that's a good, any other questions on
Yeah,
that?
I want to be clear. Is the Athletic Foundation and the Conservancy, the 300,000, is this commitment for 3 years, for 300 for 3 years, or continue
5 years, their 5-year plans.
5 years each?
That's
But it's
correct.
not every year going forward. It's 5 years.
I would
or-
imagine you'd have to revisit it at that
That's my
time. and
point. We'd have
with
to-
the NCAF and the Conservancy would have to revisit their plans.
And the
as far
Dunning
as-
lights are, this is our contribution, or this is the entire?
This is the this is the replacement for the Dunning lights.
The
We're now
original
responsible.
Dunning lights.
Right,
Oh,
the
yeah,
Parks
it's
Department is now
time.
responsible for the
Yeah.
maintenance of Dunning, so
Yeah,
at that
it's
point in
time.
time, it fell to our side, so
Okay.
we said, okay, it's
So
25 years old. And,
tomorrow, on Tuesday, we're gonna have to discuss whether or not we want to keep this in and bond it. Actually, we don't need to decide whether we're gonna put it in the general fund or not. If we use the general fund set aside on Tuesday. We don't actually have to do that, because we can have it in the plan and then we can make that decision when the project comes along, what we want to do.
It's true.
True,
Yeah.
but it's one thing to have. Anyways, you can always do that.
Okay.
You can always do all of it.
All right.
It's like what we did.
Any
with
of
the
it.
internal
I
storage
think
fund.
it's good to pay
Any
for
of
some
it.
stuff current, guys.
Excellent discussion.
You got the
No,
money.
I understand. It's a good- Okay, all right,
Do you find
planetarium.
everything in your house?
Planetarium.
Well, why don't I do the planetarium? So,
Oh, sure, there's a nice one.
well, it's not the nice one, but I'm the one who reached out to the Well, hey, go ahead. You guys feel like you've got all the facts. You go for it.
I'd go, baby.
I thought that so, and I may have made a mistake. I thought you asked for 500. Was it 550? Yeah, it was 500. So for starters, save 50. But what I did, there is some support, and I had members call me and I've gotten emails about this. There is support for the planetarium. And the question I asked the superintendent, I said, well, two questions. One, not to undo my negotiating point of view, but how about 350?
It's
Could we
550.
could we move the 350 and do that with the idea that we'd like to raise the other 150 or 200 if it is 550 either way. We try to raise that privately. There is interest of people that might want to contribute. Don't know if that'll close the gap. Don't know if you need the whole 500. But let's go with the support being 350. Let's raise the difference. And then I think a year from now, you'll know what it is and what the final costs were. And if you needed to come back to us and say, we didn't quite get there, we need another $100,000, we'd have that conversation. Is that a pretty good representation of what we discussed?
All at the time. Yep, and it was 550 in the budget book, and we were actually with that 550 anticipating some fundraising of about 125 or so. So what we're looking to do now is double that fundraising and then fundraise more.
Okay.
Which I'm willing, certainly, I think
Okay.
there's a lot of interest.
Okay.
The timeline is a little more aggressive only
Okay.
because the company that services the projector now is no longer able to service it.
Right.
And we have courses that need it in the fall. So we'd be looking to do the work this summer.
Okay.
So we're gonna,
Okay.
we've got people lining up now to start doing some of the fundraising
Okay.
work and,
People?
expect a call or reach out individually there.
There you go.
And we'll,
Todd, you know where to find them.
Yep. I
But
can't.
yeah, I think it's a very positive thing. So that's a balance we can strike. And if we come up short, we'll let you know.
It's fair.
And,
Yeah.
Is everyone okay with that
Yep.
as an approach?
Yep.
That's great.
Okay, so we're gonna put it in. Excellent. Okay, good. And the last one was Vine Cottage paint.
Last item, can we put $30,000 or $35,000 into paint Vine Cottage?
That's an operating.
That's not a capital.
It's an
item.
operating, yeah.
It can be a current, a taxpayer.
We're trying to have a philosophy of not bonding everything.
Yeah.
I didn't say bond. I said, can we put 35,000 in?
Oh, yeah.
No,
It's under 50,000.
no, but
It's
the
not
question is,
capital.
we're going to do it. I think that's
It's 41,000.
41,000.
41.
That's a
Current,
Board of
that's
Selectmen
right.
decision, not a Board of Finance decision, so.
So it needs to
Well,
go
can we
back
get it
to
painted?
operating.
Board of Selectmen?
Harrison College kids. So not to answer any other, I want clarification on, this is 19 items out of 100 or whatever the long list was. We had Motorola radios, IT hardware, software, WAN hardware, boilers, blah, blah, all the rest of it. So I think these were the questions that this subcommittee came up with. Were there any others?
There's one more large item that.
Oh, Amy, are you okay with the painting it? The painting was just,
I just want to get painted.
everybody
I
wants.
just want it painted.
You have one more item?
The police station?
Oh,
So
yeah.
I was going through with the legal just to make sure on all the things we were going through and how I was planning the cash flow on it when they do the authorization. And there was two things she brought up. We can't do the authorization. Technically, you would not do an authorization unless you have a scope or dollar amount in place before you do the authorization. So we need to know the dollar amount, and I know that's up in, we're not sure what that dollar amount is. And then have a full scope done out that you would have a professional come in and say what the scope of the actual building is. The second thing she brought up was because I told her we had it in 2 authorization years. We had 10 million in this year, or the 23, we'd 7.5 in the next year. She recommended we do not do that. Do it as one authorization. Do it whatever the
Okay.
dollar amount ends up
We've always
being.
done that
No,
with
that's all right.
all the
That's fine.
major
Yeah,
projects.
she said. do
We
it
might
that way.
actually bond it over 2 years.
We could bond it
That's
over
right.
multiple
That's
years,
right.
because
I
Tiger
think that makes
Tiger got
sense.
me a schedule so I could
Yep.
try and figure out
Okay.
the bonding.
That
But
makes
she
sense.
recommended when you're going to authorize that particular project, do it as one shot, once you know the cost and the scope of the one, because she said out front, she goes, she wouldn't put the authorization together if it was not in the format of having the cost and scope for that size project.
That's not gonna happen by Tuesday.
Unfortunately.
Pick one.
We just saved $10 million.
Movie theater. Okay, so, okay, well, that comes
Just
out
to know
of,
that,
no, that's
just know-
great. That's great. Appreciate that.
Just to know from the guidelines of it.
Good input on the
Shouldn't,
guidelines.
shouldn't we put something in there though, so we can move ahead?
Just heard, yeah, we.
She won't put an authorization together if we don't know the scope and the dollar amount, because what if we put in 18 and it ends up 21? Her recommendation is you don't put it in multiple pieces as an authorization. You don't
Yeah,
come
but
back.
then it misses a whole budget cycle.
No, you can go off
You- I'm
cycle.
sorry, whose
Yeah, we
recommendation is
can.
the
We
bond
can do
council?
Bond
special.
council, yeah, not to do the authorization in 2.
We can do this authorization.
You can do the
off-cycle.
authorization.
Yeah.
off
Yeah,
schedule.
we,
100%.
we certainly could,
Yeah.
but we also have had enough estimates that I don't know that that's a fair statement.
We,
that
we don't know what the strategy is.
We
gonna
don't
be.
know the
don't,
scope or,
but-
yeah.
We've got a lot of numbers. I mean, it's not like there hasn't been enough work done to.
Well, we don't have the criteria to satisfy them, so that answers
So
the
Yeah,
question.
and
Fair enough.
she said that outright, that she talked to
Okay.
anyone who
All
had
right,
further
well, then-
questions on it.
Any other any else? I mean, a great job, by the way, on all of it, right? Frankly, I mean, it was
Okay.
really clear and everything. Anything else? Anything else you don't need that you've come back with? You're keeping your cards kind of close to your chest there. Tiger.
I've been looking, I'm sorry, like, it's a tough year, I'll be honest.
I
with you.
appreciate
I've been
it,
looking, you know, the,
Yep, okay. Any other items, questions? You're good? Amy?
Nope.
You good? Neil? Okay. Those are the topics. So that helps. Well, we will have to make some decisions on Tuesday. What's going to be capital, what's going to be operating, and then that'll impact whether we, bond it or so forth and expenses. Okay.
Actually, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The ratio of general fund to operating budget. I understand you want to keep it somewhere between 15 and 18%. So are we shooting for the lower side of that range or the higher side of that range?
I mean, that's up to us, right? So we know there's sort of a minimum of 10%, right? You heard that. That's what the bonding committee
Moody's
and
likes.
and Moody's and everyone likes to make sure. So on 160 million, 16 is sort of the minimum, right? We have to call it 29, right? So we like to have more than that. We don't want to ever cut it close. We like to have the ability to do things. And so when, we've always tried to be maybe not 10%, but like 15. As our budget gets up, obviously the 29 looks a little bit smaller every year. So
So Moody's is looking at us and they're rating us. If we had 14% or 15%, would that?
it would make them, they'd be fine, but they're not the only constituency, right?
Sure. And Moody's has this whole scale, right? Of these 5 buckets they look at, and debt and financial obligations are one chunk of it. I mean, Moody's fundamentally looks about the wealth levels and the ability, their grand list and stuff like that. However, I can tell you, you look across AAA states, AAA towns across the state, they all have big cash cushions, big general fund balances, and then also the cash cushion, which is what their cash resources are high. It's certainly a positive. It also gives us incredible flexibility.
Yeah.
But there's a question like how much do you get too much? And then I would say it'd be a good idea to spend some of it on some capital projects we have to do.
We're short-term fixed costs, right? We can't eliminate costs immediately. It's very hard. And when conveyance fees and parking fees, that revenue dried up, that was a little nerve-wracking, right? So we were happy that we had the cushion that we had. Didn't think twice about doing the things that we needed to do, which was great. One of them being obviously getting the school facilities, all the things that they needed. So anyway, our philosophy has been always more than that, right? More like 15. That would be in the mid-20s range. We're probably a few million above that, but not, depending if we're going to spend 5 million as we do every year, you never know. One of these years we may end up spending it.
Plus, for some time, one of the cushions that we wanted to maintain was to have some dry powder in case some unfunded mandate got pushed down to us from Hartford.
That's right.
So that we could,
That's true.
we'd have to deal with it, but at least we could begin to.
But we could deal with it, right?
Yeah, we would have a way to soften the blow to the
Mhm.
taxpayers of this town, so it doesn't get them all at once. So that's another chunk of money, $4 or $5 million.
Mhm.
So, it's, you get up there and there's like 3, 4, maybe of disposable funds that,
And max.
so it's not a huge endless pool, and we gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Like you say, if Farm Marker gets hit for 5 million one year,
Although, look, it's a legitimate question to ask yourself, how many of these points of comfort do we really need?
Yep.
Right? So we have a large general fund balance, and then we have all of these sort of redundant or overlapping funds and reserve
Mhm.
funds and other
Mhm.
things that are
Mhm.
backed up by
Mhm.
$29 million. And then we have a 98.5% collection assumption, when in fact, we're always overhitting that, which is one of the reasons why the money's recycling back and we're not really spending the $5 million pay down of the mill rate. that we think about.
We give it to the taxpayers every year.
Right, and so then you have to kind of figure out, well, where are you? How does that make sense? But I agree,
We give
the
it,
unfunded mandate was
that was a
point of some concern. for
and
a
that
long
hasn't
time.
gone away.
No,
No, that could
it's a real
rotate.
risk.
Are we discussing the collection rate? Are we having a discussion on that, or are we just all comfortable with 90?
our assumption's 98.5.
98.5.
That's
I know.
that's in the budget. Again,
Yeah,
we can
I
certainly.
mean, we certainly could change that.
We'll get a sensitivity on that,
Since what?
right? Sensitivity.
We also are in an environment of we had 4 years of flat requests for taxation from the taxpayers. We're probably in an escalating
Mhm.
cost environment now on a couple of levels. So always one of the thoughts has been we can use an extra million if we needed to soften the blow to taxpayers for an increase. That's just personally speaking, just been my biggest reason for why we want to keep a little more dry powder, because we always have that flexibility to soften a spike and not just have a big tax increase as a result of that. And it's worked.
We did last year.
So like we did last year.
We did last year in a big way.
So that helps keep things moderate from any kind of increase, which has been 0 for 4 years. So
But it's always the risk too, when you do use these one-time measures, you start out the next year
in the hole.
in the hole.
That's right.
And you got
That's another
that's a
thing.
tricky
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, you could go to 99%, but you just gave away 0.5% that you got to come up with the following year.
Okay, any other comments on these two topics? So we have some follow-ups on the capital. We have a follow-up on the Playhouse. And you have a follow-up with Joanne, and if we have to have a conversation, we can have a conversation about that as well. I think that's it.
Were we doing a playground? Or was that just going to keep it
We
there and we'll
agreed,
work
keep
on it
it-
over time?
Keep it, work on it over time. I don't think it was in our minds that it was being what you were talking about it for, and so that was helpful tonight, actually.
Mhm.
Any other questions? What did I tell you, Tucker?
8:45.
And
I didn't think we would either. Mm-mm.
I said
What was
8:45.
the over-under?
I said 8:45, and immediately you said that was the dumbest thing you could have possibly said, because now we'll be at 11. And I thought, oh my God, she might be right. All right, thank you, everybody. Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Tom, second? Second? I need a second? I need a second. I need a
Chris.
second. Chris, all right, all in favor? Aye, opposed, none? Thank you, Michael.
Yep. Bye.
That one now.